Good evening, everybody. It's John here from Tutor to You, welcoming you along to yet another of our live stream revision blasts for A-level economics. And tonight we're concentrating on development economics. We were missing last week whilst the team were out and about delivering training around the country. So welcome back. A very warm welcome to you if you are on half-term holiday this week. Well done for making it along to our session. I know some of you are enjoying yourselves with a little bit of R&R, and some of you are getting ready for your half-term next week, and we will be back next week. Of course, I'm joined as ever by our wonderful team. We've got Geoff on the left of the screen and Kathy on the right hand side. Good evening, both.
Hello.
Good to see you both. So if you've not watched one of these before, what we're going to do is about 30 minutes or so of fast-paced activities, as I say, based upon development economics tonight. We would love to see your responses in the chat window, so please do use the chat window. If it's a simple multi-choice question, just give us a letter. Sometimes there's slightly longer answers required. We would love to see those. The PowerPoint we're using tonight will be available for you to download as soon as this live stream finishes, so you can always go back over those questions. And this is being recorded. A very warm welcome to anybody watching this on replay. And we know that thousands of people do just that. I think we might be ready to start. Shall we get going, guys?
Yeah, let's.
Okay. So multiple choice kickoff. I think there are 5 multiple choice questions. So here's the first one. And post the answer in the chat window. Which of the following are characteristics of a less economically developed country? Now we're looking here for the best combination. There might be one that aspects that are right for one, but not totally correct. So what do we think here? Which of the following are characteristics of a less economically developed country? No one country fits any one template. What are we going here? Adola says C. Greta says C. Victor and Millie and Fergus and Alfie and Daniela are in agreement. Here's the answer coming up. Yes, C. All 3 of those are firmly characteristics. Lack of sanitation, open defecation in the streets. The World Bank publishes each year the number of people who don't have basic sanitation. It's still well over 1 billion people. Great start, everybody. Question number 2. The Human Development Index. Here's a question of how it's composed and measured. So the HDI consists of what? Again, we're looking here for an answer that's totally correct. Think about how the HDI is constructed. Initially created by the great Amartya Sen. What do we think here? Most people here going for D. And the consensus seems to be D. Greta and Sky, Victor, Alfie. Let's just double check. And the answer is indeed D. Now, keep in mind here, of course, HDI data, composite measure of development, a 1/3 weighting attached to each of these. Just a very quick point before we move on here. GNI per capita, of course, is gross national income, which includes remittances. And remittances are now a hugely important source of external finance for many countries. For some countries, it's over a quarter of their GDP, adding to their GDP. And of course, PPP, purchasing power parity. When you get the data on these kind of things, look to see if there is a PPP adjustment. Question number 3 coming up. I like this question. The capital output ratio refers to what? Now, not everybody would necessarily have done this. The capital output ratio, if you're an EdXL student, you may have come across the Howard-Domar model, which makes reference to the capital to output ratio. What do we think for question 3? What does it refer to? Is it the efficiency of domestic firms in an economy? Is it the productivity of capital investment? Is it the ratio of savings to investment in that model I mentioned? Is it the proportion of capital-intensive industries in an economy? So, answers coming through. Jay and Pete and Victor think it's C. Sarah says she's never heard of it. So you learn something every day. Jennifer thinks B. Eman thinks D. So quite a little bit of variation here. Liam has got the right answer, and Alfie has the right answer too. Let's double check. Here it comes up. It is indeed B. So the capital output ratio is essentially a measure of how productive are your tractors, your machinery, your hardware, and it's basically how much capital do you need to produce 1 unit of something. And typically, as countries become more technologically proficient, that capital to output ratio goes down. In other words, capital productivity goes up. And crucial to development, of course, is to lift productivity, both labour and capital. Hopefully they achieve at the same time. Question 4. Dutch disease is a shorthand way of describing what? So what do we think is something, again, you may have come across? If you haven't, if you haven't come across it, say so in chat, and then we can explain it for you. So Dutch disease is a shorthand way of describing what? Fergus says, nope, not heard of this before. Okay, Fergus, we'll give you a little explanation. A couple of people coming in with A. Liam thinks C. What do we think? Danny says never seen, but he thinks F. Good call, Danny. Great call. Danny's got the right answer, and so too is Victor. Let's go through the answer. It is indeed A. So Dutch disease is basically where one sector is growing very quickly and can actually have a knock-on but negative effect in another sector. Case in point. Okay, so the Australian dollar is driven up by a rampant booming iron ore sector or the coal industry. So sales of iron ore exports to China, that drives the Australian dollar up, but then that makes Australian car making uncompetitive. So often it's linked to an exchange rate appreciation. You have a booming sector, often linked to natural resource prices rising, and that then has a squeeze on another industry, often manufacturing. My last question, I think. Again, I like this question. It's subtle. What is specifically aimed? Now, that's the key word there. What is specifically aimed at the very poorest members of society so they themselves can lift themselves out of poverty? Houster says, why is it called Dutch disease? It was associated with a significant increase in the price of natural gas in the 1970s. The Dutch had discovered and extracted natural gas in the mid-70s that caused the Dutch guild at the time to appreciate dramatically, and it had a big effect on Dutch manufacturing, including an embryonic electronic sector, including Philips and Dutch Dutch manufacturing, Dutch car makers. What do we think here? What's the most specific policy there to lift people out of poverty? Aaron and Liam. Sarah has the right answer. What do we think on this one? And the answer is indeed B. Microfinance is more specific. Now, you can make a case for saying that access to savings accounts is an important part of financial development, and access to basic insurance for farmers is an anti-poverty measure. But microfinance, associated, of course, with Mohammed Yunus, the Grameen Bank, is a more specific. The debate, of course, is how effective it is. But that's another issue for another day. So I'll pass over to Kathy.
Thank you very much. This is the first time I've ever done the connection spinner. So super exciting. So what we're going to be looking at here, we've got various possibilities around the edge, and who knows where this is going to land. But we're looking for the expected impact on a developing country's HDI of, John, would you like to spin the connection spinner? Entirely random, so let's see where this ends up. Okay, so we're looking for the impact of inward investment from a multinational corporation. So impact on a developing country's HDI. So let's see what we get in the chat. Straight in, someone saying it would increase HDI. In fact, I'm seeing a lot of that. Improve, all in capitals. Let's just wait for a moment. Also from Liam, HDI increases because the GNI would increase. Let's give it just a moment longer. Everybody seems to be in agreement on this. So we've got added detail now around employment and increase in demand for goods and services. Excellent. John, would you like to put up our answer to this? I always think often our answers are not as good sometimes as the ones on the chat. We've got some excellent answers here today. So more employment is going to be one of the impacts of this, and possibly investment in infrastructure. So that's a really important point to remember. So infrastructure gaps can really stand in the way of development. So this is a really useful aspect if it's happening. As a number of people said, we're going to see GNI per capita rise. And as you already know from the multiple choice, this is one of the components of the HDI with a third of the weight. So excellent. There are disadvantages, of course, from inward FDI. Sometimes we see companies taking advantage of weaker health and safety or environmental laws. Profits might get repatriated, and sometimes we'll see tax avoidance techniques to increase profits. But some excellent answers here. Really well done. John, could we have the second one of the connection spinners then, please? Okay, so this time we want the impact of trained midwives migrating to work in economies paying them higher wages. So what is the impact of this going to be on the HDI of a developing country? Trained midwives migrating to work in economies paying higher wages. Geoff again asking if the spinner is random. And it is. I wasn't expecting these two. It is random, of course. So Sienna's saying it will reduce the HDI. I can see quite a number of people saying it would reduce it. Yes, several references to brain drain, and that's absolutely right, isn't it? Just give it a moment or two more. I'm super impressed at the length of answers that people are able to get on the chat. John, could we have our answers, please? So the answer we've got here is, of course, that it will reduce HDI, and that says life expectancy for mothers and children will fall. Now, we've got a question coming up in a minute about demographics, so I don't want to say too much about it at this point, but demographics and the size and composition of populations is hugely important for development economics. I did a bit of research just in case this question came up. So the largest needs-based shortages of nurses and midwives in the world at the moment are in Southeast Asia and Africa. Right, Geoff, let me hand back to you for some bubble quiz questions.
Okay, Kathy, thank you. When it comes to midwives questions, Kathy can always deliver. So this is a bubble quiz. I'm going to ask you a question, and what you have to do in chat. Thanks for staying with everybody. Post the correct answers. So here's the question: which of the following are considered to be a non-governmental organisation, or NGO? This is a bit geeky, this question, but let's see who knows what it is. Post it in the chat window, please. Which of these do you think is the correct answer? It could be one answer, could be two, could be three, could be four, could be none of them. Liam's coming very quickly with A, B, and D. NGOs, non-governmental organisations. Non-governmental. So EAD, just thinking D here. One of our great contributors, Randa Manana, has come in with all of them. Alfie thinks A, B, and D. Millie says none of them. Okay, interesting. Well, here's the answer coming up on the screen for you. And the answer is the IMF. Is a non-governmental organisation. The World Trade Organization, the Federal Reserve, the United Nations all have governmental status, supranational status. The IMF is separate to that. Number two, which of the following are considered part of the poverty trap? Again, Kathy's talking about the importance of demographics, the causes of poverty, and the so-called poverty trap theories are super important that you need to understand. So which of the following do you think are part of the poverty trap? High inflation leading to low business confidence, people unable to get out of poverty, low incomes leading to low investment in education, human capital, poverty which is passed on from generation to generation. Liam thinks BCD, Millie agrees BCD. Teddy, you're head of school, BCD. Congratulations, Teddy, on that position. Che thinks D. Desmond thinks C. So how many do you think are correct? The answer's coming up now. And Sarah's right, B, C, D. You can make a case for saying that high inflation can be a cause of poverty. But it's not specifically a part of the poverty trap. C and D, particularly important. Low human capital. The inability to save to finance investment in education is super important. Oftentimes, poorest families can only afford perhaps to educate one, perhaps two children. Of course, that's a substantial cause of gender inequality. Poverty, which is passed on from generation to generation, again, in part because of the lack of savings. Intergenerational poverty. If you can break that cycle, you can do wonderful things. If you can't, it's persistent. Here's the next question. Which of the following are non-economic factors that can influence growth and development? I like this question. So which of the following would you categorize as a non-economic factor that can have an impact on, for good or bad, growth and development? Access to credit, commodity price stability, geographical proximity to potential trading partners, and personal wealth. What do we think here? Alfie and Pete and Riley Keegan, always good to have at least two Rileys in the live stream. Olivia have gone for C. A couple of people also choosing D. Here's the answer coming up. And we think the answer is just C. Geographical proximity. Now, you can make a case for saying it's economic geography. This is sometimes called gravity theory. Gravity theory is you tend to trade more with countries in close proximity, and it's certainly relevant in the sort of post-Brexit debate. All the others are essentially economic factors, including particular access to credit, commodity price instability, and of course levels of wealth. And I think we have one more, which are the following. On the screen there are examples of infrastructure. So as Catherine was saying, many countries suffer from an infrastructure gap. And FDI is one way of overcoming that. Indeed, it's one way of overcoming the savings gap, which limits investment. Which of the following you think are examples of infrastructure? Public utilities, transportation networks, public services, such as the emergency services, credit availability. What do we think? Danny's gone for B and C. Anika thinks A, B, C. So most people thinking there that B and C are correct. Adiola thinks A, B, C. Here's the right answer, or here's our suggested answer. We think A, B, and C. Public utilities, including education, health, basic sanitation. Now, credit availability, we've decided not. I think that those three are pretty obvious, but you could make a case for saying that financial institutions are part of the infrastructure of an economy, and the health and the scope and scale of those institutions have an impact on credit availability. But it's not specific to infrastructure. It's a kind of byproduct there. Well done. Over to Kathy for the next activity. Well done, everybody.
Excellent. Well, this is a categorise activity, and it's certainly something my students often find quite difficult, being able to split policies into market-led ones and interventionalist ones. And it's hugely important that you can do this. So just before we start, a bit of a reminder that market-led strategies, these are ones that prioritize the role of the market, where they're based around private sector activity and market-based mechanisms. So really try and think about that when you're deciding which category to put these policies into. So you've got 60 seconds to try and get this right. So lots of answers coming in, which is great. Excellent. John, would you like to give us the answers that we have, please? Right, so there we go. So we have got 3 of these categorized as market-led strategies. So the first on here, reducing import tariffs. So this is an example of trade liberalization. Lots of advantages of this for development, some downside as well, of course. So you would lose your tariff revenue, which for some countries is quite important. You think about your tariff diagrams, there is a risk of structural unemployment, depending on the adaptability of labour in the country in question. And to start off with, you may have a worsening trade deficit. Privatisation falls into this category. This is the transfer of assets from state ownership to the private sector, and you'd be trying to increase efficiency, maybe increase competition depending on how the privatisation was structured. And we've got improved competitiveness in the financial sector as well. On the interventionist side, then, we've got export promotion, so perhaps subsidising particular industries, managing exchange rate fluctuations, so possibly using interest rates to do that, or direct intervention in the foreign exchange markets, import substitution, so strategies to reduce dependence on imports by promoting growth of domestic industries, infrastructure development, we've spoken about already several times today, and subsidising agriculture. So this might do a number of things, for example, improving food security, possibly having a significant impact on reducing poverty and improving nutrition. So great answers, and I can see Geoff saying lots of scope for good diagrams. Always important to use a relevant diagram when you can. Geoff, let me hand back over to you then.
Okay, thanks, Kathy. Let's have one go at give me three. The idea here is if you can think of 3 points, you've pretty much got an answer you need. Obviously, you can tailor it and temper it and evaluate. So here we go. Give me 3 potential benefits of rapid, fast population growth. We have a minute or 30 seconds. We'll find out. So think about countries, is demography and development. Think about countries with fast population growth. What are some of the potential benefits of rapid population growth? Well, Ollie's doing a great job in the production room showcasing some of the answers here. Oh, if you go back to the answer from Sky, John, that was pretty amazing. Sky talking about demographic dividend. India surpassed China of 1.1 billion, more working age, more tax revenue. That may well link in. Victor talks about greater human capital. Obviously, a potential there for long and aggregate supply, particularly if you can link population growth itself to human capital, to lifting the skills. Harry talks about a labour force growing, increasing aggregate demand, which in turn generates more demand and jobs, a kind of multiplier effect. Sarah talks about increased output, increased aggregate demand, and in the long run, and particularly if you can increase the size of the formal labour force, a fiscal dividend as well in terms of extra tax revenues. The other give me 3 is if you can think of 3 points, 3 arguments, 3 examples, you'll be in great shape for the exam. So these are amazing. Eamon talks about increased employment, increased government revenue, all these good points. Let's just double check with our potential answers here. First of all, expands the working population, particularly if that rapid population growth is from net inward migration of people already of working age, especially if you get younger workers joining the labour force. It increases potentially the size of domestic markets because you've got a bigger population to serve. And then the really strong answer would link that to, for example, economies of scale. So if the market gets bigger, your domestic firms can scale up production, and there are follow-up benefits of that. And quite a few people talking about the tax base. So the tax base is how many people are paying tax and what taxes they're paying. So you have an increased labour supply if they're in work. And the key here is to get an increase in waged employment of the labour force. The biggest single route out of poverty is to have at least 1 and possibly 2 family members in work. But if more people are in work paying money, they're going to pay more tax, direct tax and income tax, but perhaps even VAT and things. So lots of potential benefits. And of course, the evaluation is to challenge and question those points. That's my final activity. Over to Kathy for her final activity.
Right, I think the give me 3 is so important, Geoff. I'm always saying to my students, when you consolidate and revise a topic, pre-plan what your 3 points are going to be. So it won't always be perfect, but any thinking that you can do ahead of the exams is going to save you time, isn't it?
Sure.
Right,
totally.
My last activity then is on balance, and this is going to be a quick activity. What we'd like you to do is to think about the advantages and disadvantages, and we're going to start with advantages for a developing economy of a strong manufacturing sector orientated towards exports. So let's do the advantages first. Are you able to think of any? And can you add those to the chat? Geoff, I can see, has added. This is a chance for you to shine with your evaluation. So we're going to start with the advantages of a strong manufacturing sector orientated towards exports. So improvements in the balance of trade, and I saw the previous one linked that to improved standards of living. So some excellent answers coming in. Increase in profits we've got. We'll just give people just a little bit longer. It takes quite a while to type some of these longer answers in. Export-led growth here from Victor. Now I saw one. Someone's commenting on disadvantages, but we'll come to that in a moment. John, do you want to put up on screen our 2 advantages? Then I think people pretty well had these. So the first one, increased exports of manufactured goods, is going to bring you higher economic growth, and somebody specifically mentioned export-led growth. And then these higher foreign earnings are going to mean that it's much easier for you to pay for your imports. So if you're importing capital goods, for instance, that's going to be easier for you now. And these higher imports of capital goods will improve your productive potential and raise your LRAS. So 2 disadvantages now then. I can see some of these already coming up on the screen. So Eve here talking about negative externalities that may be associated with this. I saw on a previous one, possibly lack of diversification. Trade routes may be cut off. Comments about skills, whether there are relevant skills, susceptibility to potential economic shocks. So some absolutely excellent answers coming in. John, could we have our 2 now then, please? So the 2 we've got, but so many of these answers are very valid. A trade surplus, if that's where this exports takes you, may lead to protectionist measures from your trading partners. And as a number of you have identified, a recession or any kind of economic shock like that could lead to a fall in your exports and hence AD and lower real national output. Excellent. I believe that's it now. This is the first one of these I've done where we've actually finished in pretty well 30 minutes.
You're not wrong, Kathy. Yeah, brilliant stuff. Although you're absolutely right, Kathy. We have finished on time. The quality of the answers, though, have been absolutely first rate, and they're still coming in, which is wonderful to see. Thank you so much to everybody who has contributed their responses tonight. They have been first rate, and it's lovely to see so many. Of course, a massive thank you both to Geoff and Kathy for delivering doing those activities as well. We're back next week, so do join us at the same time next week, 6:30. So we'll be back along. I think we're talking about poverty and inequality next week, so it'd be lovely to see you then. Don't forget that the PowerPoint we've just been using is available for you to download in about 10 seconds time when I've finished. Please do give us a thumbs up in YouTube if you found tonight useful. That helps get our message out there to a wider audience. And don't forget, this has been recorded, so you can always watch it all over again. Brilliant stuff, everybody. Hope to see you again very soon. We'll say goodbye for now. Goodbye, everybody.
Bye.